Hi guys, here we are for lesson 3B, which is going to teach us to use tables and double number lines to model equivalent rates. So again, we're working with rates. Remember that rates are special kinds of ratios, and unit rates are those rates that have a 1 in the denominator. And remember that rates compare quantities with different units, like miles per hour. All right, well, let's get started here. So you should have your notes. If you don't, remember you can always download those from our page. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Using tables and double number lines to model equivalent rates, and then of course we'll be solving some problems with this information. So suppose Jim drove 180 miles in 3 hours. Complete both the table and the double number line. All right, so it'll be the same information, just in 2 different formats this first time. So if he travels for 3 hours, he will travel 180 miles. So this, if we would convert that to our unit rate, remember the unit rate says that we take the denominator and we divide it into the numerator. So if we have 180 miles in 3 hours, and we want to know what that is in 1 hour, we're going to divide by 3. And 180 divided by 3 is going to give us 60 miles then in 1 hour. And so right off the bat, we can go ahead and fill out our unit rate up here. That would be 1 hour would give us 60 miles of travel. So we can see that this is 1 times 60 to get our 60 here. We can fill the rest of this chart in that way by multiplying each one of these by 60. So 2 times 60 would give us 120. And then we know that 3 times 60 is 180. 4 times 60, 4 times 6 is 24, and add our 0 onto the end, so that's 240 miles. 6 times 60, 6 times 6 is 36, and add a 0 on. And then 12 times 60, 12 times 6 is 72, so add a 0 because we're multiplying by 60 instead of 6. Now, the way that we would fill out, this may be new to you, it was kind of new to me this year. And the way that we would fill out this double number line is we'll put the number of hours on the bottom here. So we went from 1 to 12 actually here, but we'll just go to 7 on this line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll make that a 7 instead of a 12 so that we can keep this a number line. We wouldn't want to skip from 6 to 12 on a number line. And then in order to figure out the number of miles that we traveled, we would multiply each one of these by 60. So 1 times 60 is 60, and 2 times 60 is 120, just like in our chart over here. 3 times 60 is 180. 4 times 60 is 240, 240 miles. 5 times 60, which we skipped over here, so 5 times 60 is going to give us 300. 6 times 60 we have in our chart over here, so that was 360. And then we didn't have 7 times 60 over here, but we know that 7 times 6 is 42, and then add on our 0 for our 60. Okay, so now let's answer some questions about this. What is the unit rate for this scenario? Well, we know that that's the one where the number of hours is 1, and so our unit rate then is 60 miles in 1 hour. Okay, and of course we could write that 60 miles in 1 hour or 60 miles to 1 hour. Can you even write it 60 miles per hour? All right. So how many miles will he go in 10 hours? Well, remember that to get from the miles to from the hours to the number of miles, we multiplied by 60. So we'll just take our 10 and do the same thing. For 10 hours, we'll multiply that by 60, the number of miles we travel in 1 hour. 6 times 1 is 6, and we have to add 2 zeros, so he would travel 600 miles. How many hours will it take him to go 540 miles? Well, in order to go from the number of miles to the number of hours, we have to go the reverse. We would divide by 60. So we're going to take our 540 and divide that by 60. And we know that 6 divides into 54 9 times. And then we've got to account for this 0. So, no, sorry, we've already accounted for that 0 because we're dividing by 60. So these zeros cancel each other out. And so that would give us 9 hours. And remember, you can always do your division like this if you want to. Okay. Alrighty, and then how many hours will it take him to go 390 miles? That's really similar to this one, right? So we're going to take our 390 and we're going to divide by 60. And when we do that problem, we'd work that out like this. 390 divided by 60. When we do that, we'll find out that that would take us 6.5 hours, 6.5 hours. All right. So you see that we can get a lot of information, and this helps us, this kind of a number line or a chart helps us to figure out, do we need to multiply or do we need to divide to figure out our answers to these problems. All right, let's flip your notes open like this. I'm going to do this next one with you, and then I want you to try this one on your own. So let's look at this next one here. All right, up here we have Juan, and he has a job that pays $44 for 4 hours of work, and Maria has a job that pays $18 for 2 hours of work. Now pay attention here, this is a little bit different. We're going to use Juan's pay rate to complete this table, but then we're going to use Maria's pay rate to complete this double number line so that we can do some comparison of the two. All right, so what do we know? We know that in 4 hours, Juan made $44, so he made $44 in 4 hours. So we know that to get our unit rate, we'd have to divide both by 4, and we find out that he makes $11 in 1 hour then. So this is our $11 up here in 1 hour. And now we know that we would multiply each of the hours by 11 to get our money made, and we would take each of these where we have the money but we're missing the hours, we're going to divide that by 11 to get over here. All right, so if we have 22 hours, if we made $22 and we want to know how many hours, we take 22 and divide it by 11, and that would give us 2. If he worked for 3 hours and he's making $11 an hour, then we know that 3 times 11 is 33. And there's our starting point. Okay, a little bit trickier down here. We've got that he makes $60.50. So we'd have to divide that by 11 to find out how many hours then he worked. And if we took $60.50 divided by 11, we're going to get 5 hours, 5.5 hours, 5.5 hours. And then finally, if he worked for 10 hours and he made $11 every hour, we took 10 times 11 and we get $110 over here. So we've got our chart filled out for Juan. Now we're going to go over here and fill out our double number line for Maria. And so the hours worked here, we'll fill those in. We're going to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We're going to go by 2's there, but we are going to put a 1 in here so that we can get our unit rate. All right, So we know that she made $18 for 2 hours of work. And so if we took that 18 and divided it by 2, we get our unit rate of $9. So for 1 hour, she would make $9. Alrighty, and then 2 hours gives her $18. So 4 hours would give her $36 because 4 times our $9 gives us the 36. Now, if she works 6 hours, then we have to multiply that by our 9, right? So 6 times 9 is going to give us 54. And then if she works 8 hours, we multiply that by our 9, our unit rate, so that's going to give us 72. And then over here, if she made $90, we're going to take that 90 and divide it by our $9 every hour, and that's where we get this 10. Right, so down here it says how many hours would Juan have to work to make $104.50. So that's money made. In order to find the number of hours, if we've got the money here, to go from money to hours, we have to divide. So we'll take our $104.50 and we'll divide that by our $11 that we make per 1 hour. And when we do that division, we find out that it's 9.5 hours. Then how many hours would Maria have to work to make $90? So again, money made for Maria is up here. And if we take the money that she made and divide it by how much she makes per hour, we find that 90 divided by 9, of course, is 10 hours. And we already had that in our chart. All right, now, who has the higher pay rate and how do you know? Well, let's look at our unit rates. So Juan makes $11 in 1 hour. And Maria, let's look at her unit rate, makes $9 in 1 hour. And so we know then that Juan gets the higher rate because he makes $11 in 1 hour, where Maria makes $9 in 1 hour. So we know that it's Juan because his unit rate is higher. All right, so Juan has the better rate because his unit rate of $11 per hour is higher than Maria's of $9 per hour. All right, guys, I'm going to stop this video here, and I want you to try this second half on your own, see what you can do with that, and then I'll have a second video for you to check that on. But do make sure you try this on your own so that you can get a feel for how these work.